Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Melissa. I am the owner and artist here at the Top Drawer RVA located in Richmond, Virginia. Today's project is a great project for beginners. I am going to teach you from start to finish exactly what you need to do to a small table to get it ready for paint. To begin with, always clean with white lightning and rinse with water. This table is a slick surface and will require Slick Stick. Slick Stick is a gripping primer for any slick or shiny surface and prepares your project very well for paint. While waiting for my Slick Stick to dry on this tiny little table, I decided to add some small embellishments. I ordered these little half-round circles off of Amazon. I received a bag full of 3 different sizes and they are perfect for adding to your furniture.
My name is Melissa, owner and artist of the Top Drawer RVA, also one of your friendly Dixie Belle brand ambassadors, and I'm always trying to teach everybody and educate everybody and do whatever I can do to help them learn all about Dixie Belle paint products. So let's get started. So this is a tiny little table, and this little table has been prepped with a couple of different things, and I thought I would tell you about why I did the choice that I did for prep and what it does for my projects when it comes to painting. So this little table is a manufactured wood, and when I say manufactured wood, it means that the outside of this surface is a wood-like veneer, but the interior of the wood is actually a particle board. This is not like a solid wood piece. Is particle board wood? Sure, technically. But when you get a piece like this that is actually a little bit more shiny on the surface, you might have a little bit of trouble getting your paint to adhere to a project like this. So this little table has been cleaned with white lightning and then rinsed with water, and then I did a coat of Slick Stick. Now, Slick Stick is this white primer. It only comes in white, but you can see as I scratch it and do anything that I can to it, you're not going to be able to get down to that wood. So what this is doing is giving me an adhesion gripping primer for any slick or shiny surface before you come in here and paint with your chalk mineral paint. So now this little table, it's just a tiny little occasional table. I grab them if they're only a couple bucks at a yard sale. I get them whenever I can to play and practice and do little fancy looks on. So for this little table, since it was a shiny wood surface that really wasn't a real wood, and by real wood I mean solid wood. When you want to think about solid wood versus laminate wood, this is solid wood. See this? That is some solid wood right there. And you can tell usually by things like the joints. This piece actually has something called nap joints. Nap joints are kind of a really fun little thing to look for when you're looking at furniture, because these nap joints can be dated within a specific time period. Nap joints were manufactured, I believe, between 1870 and early 1900s, like 1905 maybe, before they started manufacturing dovetail joints. So something like this is solid wood. I would not have to use Slick Stick on this surface because your paint is going to stick very well if you sand scuff your piece of furniture. So this is solid wood. You can tell it's usually heavy. You can tell by the joints on the side. You can tell by the wood on the side of the drawers. It's very easy to tell solid wood versus manufactured wood. And when I say manufactured wood, if you look at the sides of the drawers and the joints, you can see that they're just nailed or screwed together or even glued together in this case on a cheap kind of a laminate style table. So you can see here, you see wood grain, but when you flip it over, you do not see wood grain. This is actually just like a particle board that has been glued on the edges. So you can tell a lot by looking at the sides of your furniture, the back of your furniture, underneath your furniture. So anything that has a slick and shiny surface that I don't want to sand down to give it a scuff, give it something to grab onto, I will do Slick Stick on. So this has had a couple coats of Slick Stick on here, and it's prepped my project for paint. You can see that I'm scratching it and nothing is even happening. You can paint right over top of that. What else did I do to this little table? Well, she's a little boring. She doesn't have a lot going on, right? She's just kind of like a basic, boring little table. So I thought, wouldn't it be fun to add a couple little embellishments? So I grabbed these little half wood rounds on Amazon ages ago because I thought I would embellish a mirror. And what I did was I just then used my wood glue to glue them onto the side of the piece. So when you paint over top of it, it's going to give this tiny table a little bit more detail and a little bit more fun. So it just gives it a little bit more of a vibe going on. So I'm going to take off my tape. I glued those on yesterday. I put the tape there to hold them so that they wouldn't slide down my piece. And we can paint right over top of this. So what's the color choice for today? My daughter was like, do pink, Mom, do a hot pink. I'm like, it's a tiny table. I feel like it should be fairly neutral. So believe it or not, we are going to go neutral and we are going to go gray. Dun, dun, dun. So this is Hurricane Gray, which is actually like a bit of a muddy gray color. It's not like a super duper gray in a light factor. It's more of a muddy kind of brownish gray, and I do like it. And I feel like it's going to be neutral enough to, you know, kind of be easy to do on this little table, but also be a good seller possibly, because sometimes in the holiday season, furniture is something that's a little bit harder to sell if you're a seller, if you're a flipper, because, you know, people are shopping for Christmas decor. They're not shopping furniture as much. So a little tiny table like this, painted in a nice neutral gray color, should be able to be sold fairly quickly. Now, let me see. On the bottom of this little piece of furniture, I see something that I missed yesterday, and we're going to fix it together while I have you here on the video. Can you see this tiny little foot right here? I'll bring you in nice and close so that you can see even closer. There's a small little missing piece of wood, right? Remember we talked about this wood being very cheaply manufactured wood versus not being like a solid wood piece. This is just a little cheap manufactured table, and I see a little chip right here. I could leave that and not worry about it, but it would be quite easy to fix it. And all you need to do to fix any tiny little divots is to use a product called mud. Have you heard about Dixie Belle's mud before? This is Dixie Belle's mud. It comes 3 colors, black, white, and brown. And this is what I use for filling in any chips or damages on my veneer. It's basically like a thick paste that you can use to fill in holes. So let's fill in this little hole together. I obviously won't be able to paint over top of this, but we can paint around the foot. And then when it's dry, I can sand it back to flat and paint right over top of it. It'll be easy peasy. So when you're using Dixie Belle's mud, all you need to do is fill in that space. And I like to actually overfill like this, because then when I come in and sand it back, I can sand it back to completely flat. Now I'm stuck with a handful of mud. Let's wipe it on the floor over here rather than my body, because, you know, I didn't put an apron on today. And FYI, just so you know, mud should be kept in your refrigerator. This is moist, this is wet, and if you leave it out in your workshop, it has the tendency to possibly get moldy in there. So by putting it in the fridge, you're gonna keep it nice and fresh for when you do need it. So now that this little foot has been repaired, let me quick double check, make sure I didn't miss any on the other foots. Oh, look at this one. I gotta do it over here too. You can see a little missing section. So I'm just gonna fill in those little sections with the mud. And then when they do get dry, what I can do is just paint right over top of it. So for today's purposes, we will just ignore the feet on this piece. I'll paint down to almost the bottom, but not exactly the full base of the piece. Once this is dry, it's just going to take your regular sandpaper and gently sand it back to flat. So now that I've filled the chips that are on the feet of these pieces, let's do some painting. You want to? Let's just do some basic painting today. This is also a great time to ask any questions if you have them about Dixie Belle, about chalk mineral paint or Terra paint or silk paint, because Dixie Belle does have 3 different lines of paint. Terra clay paint is a thicker textured paint. I actually have one on the floor. I can show you if you'd like. So Terra clay paint is thicker in texture. It's a lot more like pudding. It has that texture that stays the texture. If you pounce this paint on and make little peaks and valleys, those little peaks and valleys will stay on the paint. They also have something called silk paint, which is like the smoother version of chalk mineral paint. It's smooth, it's self-leveling, it has a built-in top coat, has a built-in primer. But today we're going to be using regular chalk mineral paint. This is 0 VOCs, made in the USA, has no smell, no problems using it around your kids, your pets, etc., painting inside. And I like to use this paint for projects that will be one color or even an ombre color and mixing them together. When you use water, you can simply use 2 different tones of paint that are close in value and ombre mix them together. All right, so let's work on our tiny table. For the sake of the fact that this table is tiny, let's just paint the base. We're going to paint right over top of this, just in case somebody picks it up and moves it around. It's going to give me a nice finished look. This will be available in my booth space. I do sell my furniture, some of it gets donated. But this will probably go to my booth space at the Lazy Daisy here in Short Pump, Richmond, Virginia. If you've heard the RVA in the name of my business before, RVA stands for Richmond, Virginia area. So remember, we're going to skip the feet on this little project because I've got that mud getting dry in the corners. So we're not going to be able to paint the mud, but we can kind of paint around the mud because until it's dry, I can't get in there and finish that part of my project. So does anybody have any questions about paint while you have me here and you have my undivided attention? I can answer any questions if you have them. And if I do miss them and you ask when I'm not looking, I will be happy to answer them for you when I am finished and I come back in and rewatch the video. All right, so there we go. We've just kind of covered our base. We're going to skip the feet where we put that mud on there, and we're going to place our table back down. So we're going to paint directly over top of these little wood rounds. I think they're going to add some fun little detail, and we're going to work down here on the base of our project. So let me aim you down a little bit. If you're located in the United States, it's Turkey Week. We have a busy week this week with it being Thanksgiving. Do you have any plans? Do you have any travel plans? If you're traveling, are you worried about traffic in traveling plans? I'm always worried. I'm lucky this year I am not traveling. My husband is the chef at my house. I might be a great painter, but I am not a great chef. So my husband does do all of the cooking in my house, which is wonderful for me because then you will actually eat your food and not think it's disgusting. So he's going to be cooking our Thanksgiving dinner. I have some family coming into town, but there's no traveling for me. I parked my car today and that's it for the next 2 days. I don't have to go anywhere, which is nice. So this is chalk mineral paint. You'll see it going on over top of the slick stick. That slick stick is white. It only comes in white, but you can paint over it very easily. And this is a buildable coverage with this paint. Even though this paint is fairly dark, this will take 2 even coats of paint. It's going on nice and thin. It's going on nice and smooth and covering up that gorgeous slick stick, doing its job well, holding down the fort, making sure that my paint will adhere well to this project. So I thought maybe with the little detail that I put onto the edges of this piece that I might add, when this gets dry and I do 2 even coats of paint, then I might add some wax. I like to embellish my pieces of furniture to make them look a certain way, and sometimes that involves using Dixie Belle's wax. Dixie Belle has a wax that is water-based, so it's really easy to put it on and blend it together with your project. I like to put it on and then spray it and then wipe it back. I find it very easy to use being water-based, that you can really, mash that wax into the details and accent all of the pieces. That is perfect. Let's just cover this little circle down here. So a little project like this, if you're waiting for your chalk mineral paint to dry, you'll notice that it actually dries fairly quickly. Chalk mineral paint dries really quick. By the time I get to the top of this piece and start working up here, the stuff down at the bottom might be dry already. So if you paint with a fan on in your workshop, or you paint in a temperature controlled area, like me painting inside my own home, your paint is going to dry a little bit faster than, say, if you're painting outside in the cooler weather. If you're painting outside in the cold weather, it's going to take a little bit longer to get dry. But this little paint can be put on and dried fairly quickly. You can smooth it on like this. It's up to you. If you don't want to smooth it on and maybe you wanted to add a little bit more texture, you can stipple it on like this, which is always fun as well when you're going to be maybe adding some wax, because the wax might sit into those little stippled edges a little bit easier than if it was like a smooth surface. I love these little half rounds that I put on there. I think they're going to look super cute when they're painted over top. What do you think? Adorable, right? This little table has a tiny drawer and it does have hardware on it. I thought about changing it out, but like I said, I want this to be a pretty fast flip. So I'm probably just going to keep the original hardware, which is just a small little round knob. But if you were to get crazy, you could always check out different knobs at Hobby Lobby or your local supply, wherever you get your furniture knobs from. I tend to keep on hand a lot of different knobs that I take off of different pieces and move stuff around. I do keep a lot of that here in my home, so that when I do come into a piece maybe that's missing hardware, I can easily find something that will fit the piece. But I do like to keep stuff kind of original to the project. Like if I had a project that had hardware like this solid wood one that we're working on over here, the solid wood one with the nap joints, I'm definitely keeping the original hardware, and I'm actually not even going to be painting this. This piece is just going to be cleaned all of the way and then conditioned with hemp oil and left as is. She is a little bit too pretty for paint. She's a pretty one. So I will leave that as is. But yeah, I like to keep hardware kind of the way that it fits on the piece. And it kind of looks better when you use the hardware that came with it. If you start changing hardware out to like something too modern and your piece is really old, it can really make your project look a little strange. I think it looks much more original and much more natural when you keep the hardware in the same date period that your project is in. Like, don't go putting modern farmhouse on a piece that it just doesn't fit. Something French provincial, it just doesn't look right. So I'm going to stipple on my paint as well as wipe on my paint. And like I said, a small project like this, if you can get your paint dry, if you were working with a heat gun or a fan on, you could probably finish this whole thing in a couple hours. But I'm going to need to wait for that mud to dry that I put on the bottom on the feet that we did together. Once that mud is dry, I can sand it back to flat and then paint right over top of it. But this is just a simple little gray table. We're not getting crazy. I'm thinking about the mass market here. I'm thinking about how I want to get it done quick and get it done gone. Sell it fast. Let's do neutral, a simple neutral table. This is also a great video for somebody who is maybe just beginning to understand a little bit more about chalk mineral paint and how it works and how it feels and how it goes down. This can that I opened up today is a brand new fresh can, so the paint is fairly thin and fairly runny. When you have an older can of paint, I wonder if I have one on the floor. I don't think I do. If you have an older can of chalk mineral paint, sometimes you might find that it gets a little bit chunky. So this is putty, and this can is really old. I was using this to help me accent a piece with Tara last week. So this paint in this jar is like, you know, the Blizzard, the Dairy Queen station, when you turn the Dairy Queen Blizzard over and nothing comes out. Same. So if you're finding your paint is a little thick and you need to water it down some, you can use a spray misting bottle filled with water to help loosen up that paint and getting it kind of smooth and moving around again. But that one I keep aside. That's my Terra Brown. When I paint with Terra Clay paint, which is that textured paint that we talked about earlier on in the video, Terra Clay paint for me is always applied with a lot of texture. It's definitely got a lot more, you know, beautiful textured design to it, and that's the brown that I keep for my Terra Clay paint. So that's why that one is sitting on the floor looking all old and chunky, because I like it that way. And FYI, if you actually did have a smooth paint and you were looking to add texture to your paint, you can always take your regular smooth chalk mineral paint and you can add a texture additive to it. Let's see if I have one here in my little cart. I do. So a texture additive is something like sea spray. Sea spray is a powder that comes with a tiny little scoop inside, and you can actually scoop this out and add this to your paint. And what that's going to do is take your paint and actually give it a lot more texture. So then your textured paint can be applied in a different way. You could use more of a kind of pokey natural bristle brush to really push that texture on and give stuff like a beautiful tone. If you like, we can mix them up. I can even do some with this. Maybe we can give it a try. What do you say? You want to? Let's get this first coat on, and then we'll start to maybe add some texture with our sea spray. I think that might be a nice little benefit to this table. Because this table, even though she's cute, she does, like you saw the feet, she does have her little share of some chippiness problems. So rather than fight her and want her to be perfectly smooth, why not just move in towards maybe applying paint in another way and giving it a chippy look. All right, so let's see what we have here, how I can mix up this paint. What do we have on the floor today? I do actually have a plate. Let me grab a plate and I'm going to show you exactly how to mix up that sea spray. Hold tight. Okay. Lying by the seat of my pants. I wasn't going to add texture to this piece until we started talking about it. So when we talk about adding texture to a piece and adding sea spray to a piece, this is really simple to do. All you're going to want to do is pour your paint onto your plate or your bowl, and you're going to add this powder to it. And when you add this powder to your paint, you're creating a thicker paint. You're creating a thicker texture with your paint that will actually be buildable onto your piece of furniture. So let's do this together, all right? I'm gonna take a little bit of this Hurricane Gray and I'm gonna pour it onto my plate. All right, let's do that. Let's grab my brush and just take some of that off the edge. I'm notorious for not really keeping clean edges on my drawers, or on my edges of paint. So now we have our paint. The actual instructions on this, it says it has enough sea spray in here for 2 quarts of Dixie Belle paint. So you can use as much as you need to mix it up. The actual instructions are 2 level scoops to 8 ounces of paint. Well, this isn't 8 ounces of paint. This is just like a little scoop. So let's add just like, say, half of a scoop and see what we can get happening here with this paint and some texture. So you can see that powder, and I'm just gonna take a little stick because that's what was in my paint drawer. We're gonna mix this together. So taking that texture additive and adding it into the paint is just gonna take this paint and make it nice and chunky. It's gonna make it thick so that when we apply it in a stippling manner onto our project, it's really gonna change the look of the piece. So I'm mixing in my sea spray, and it doesn't have to be perfect. You can totally measure if you want. I'm not a really good measurer. I just want to thicken up this paint so that when I come in and start to add my second coat, it's going to really make a beautiful textured finish and hide a lot of the damages that are on this table, because this table has quite a bit of chips on it. And actually, I think the top might even have some water damage. So this is a great idea to build some texture. So now we have our mixed up paint with our sea spray. I'm gonna take this second brush that I have on the floor, which is a French tip, and I'm gonna turn my little piece around back to the side where we started. And I'm going to, instead of brushing on my paint this time, I'm gonna stipple on my paint, okay? So I'm just gonna take that paint, and it's on my brush. Remember that thick, chunky paint that we just made with sea spray? And I'm going to stipple it on. So when I'm stippling it on, you're gonna see the difference. Then let me lift this up and show you the difference. Okay, so when we did the original coat of paint, it was kind of smooth, a smoother finish. When we're stippling on this sea spray, we're getting more texture. We're pushing that paint around and we're making more of a textured design onto our piece of furniture. This is going to keep those little peaks and valleys. And when I apply my wax over top of it, it's gonna give me a really nice effect. So by stippling on like this, you're creating a textured surface where there really wasn't any before. And using that sea spray to thicken up your paint is a great way to disguise any damages. Let me move this table over a little bit more. It's so pretty, actually. I really like it. I really like having texture on my furniture, and I really like using a brush like this. To hide, to hide any of those little damages that I don't want people to see. Have you used sea spray before on your furniture? Did you love it? I mean, you could technically skip the sea spray by using your Terra Clay paint, but Terra Clay paint only has 18 colors, and sea spray you can add to any color of paint. It doesn't have to be Terra. You can add it to any paint and get that little bit of texture that you might be looking for. I really like those little, what do you call these guys? I mean, I know they're embellishments. They're half rounds from just like a bag of wood decor. But I think they're gonna add enough of a design element that it might just take this table to another level. So I'll be using black to accent this piece with wax when I'm finished. But for now, we just need to keep building these layers until we get it exactly the way that you want it to look. I am working on a wet surface. Normally I would wait for the second coat to come in and apply the second coat, but I'm just trying to show you a little bit of your options while I've got you here on how you could possibly be painting and getting texture with your sea spray. Do you like it? It's super cute, right? Super cute. Let's see, could you use sea spray with silk mineral paint? Now, here's the thing about silk. Silk alum mineral paint is made specifically with a certain amount of a base coat, which is your primer, to stop any bleed through, right, from tannins or stains. And it also has a specific amount of your top coat, which is equivalent to 1 coat of your satin clear coat. If you start adding things, even water, which is why we say don't use a spray mixing bottle with silk, When you start adding things, even a texture additive to your silk paint, you're changing the actual dynamic of the paint, and you're going to lose the properties of what those paint values are giving you. So you're going to weaken your silk paint if you're adding any water or sea spray or anything like that to your project. So I would recommend not doing that to your silk unless you don't care about keeping the integrity of that paint. If you're not worried about the fact that you want it to be self-leveling, if you're not worried about the fact that you want your base coat, which is your boss that's built in to work, or your top coat to work, then I would say go ahead and add whatever you like. But personally, I think that you would be better off using your texture additive on Terra or regular chalk mineral paint, just because of the fact that silk paint kind of has that built-in stuff for a reason, and you really don't want to mess up what you've got going on there, right, with your silk. So like I said, if you don't care that you're going to lose the integrity of your paint, you can. And there's no rules in painting, but just know that you are compromising what the ingredients are in silk, because silk has that built-in top coat and the built-in base coat for a reason. I hope that helps. I hope that helps answer your question. Also, if you're ever curious, with painting and wondering exactly maybe how a certain line works or how to use a certain line, which brushes go with what paint, you can always reference my YouTube channel. I have a YouTube channel where I will teach you exactly what paint goes with what brush goes with what. There's this whole series on there called Back to Basics, and it's going to really help you understand everything that you need to know about each specific project. Gel stain, voodoo gel stain, silk paint, chalk paint, it's all there for you, and hopefully it will help you get the answers that you need for your projects. So that, my friends, is pretty much all we can do today, because I can't paint the feet until they get dry because I put that mud on there. I can continue adding my texture, but it'd be better if I could get this first coat a little bit more dry and then work on top of the first coat versus just kind of going over the wetness. I'm rushing it just for you guys, just so I can show you and give you all the knowledge that you need while we're talking versus waiting for it to dry. But if I painted this whole thing and then put my little floor fan on, this would be dry in at least half an hour, and I could come back in and start to apply my second coat. Chalk mineral paint dries super duper quick, super duper fast. Me adding that little bit of texture additive might make it take a little bit longer to get dry, but not too long. Not too long at all. I do like this it almost looks like metal, doesn't it? Almost looks like metal, this gray color with these cute little design elements that I added on. So I hope that you learned something today about chalk mineral paint. I don't want you to ever be afraid of asking questions. That is why I am here, and that is what we are here for, to help you learn everything that you need to know. So I'm back here live, no matter what, doing my little Dixie Belle thing, and I thought, well, I'll save this table from last week to show you how I would accent it and how I would finish a table off. So last week you saw me paint this table. It's thoroughly dry. It's been dry for a couple days now, obviously, and I am ready to come here with my waxes, but I can't open this. What the heck? So I have wax on the floor, and I have some Belle's. Finally, success. I got it off. I have some Dixie Belle's Dirt. And we're going to talk today a little bit about the differences between the two products, what they can do, and I'm going to show you how I would use them. All right. So, dry piece of furniture, painted in chalk mineral paint, not sealed. I get a lot of questions. How do you seal your projects? What do you do? Would you choose wax? Would you choose clear coat? All of these things are entirely up to you. For a piece like this that has a rougher textured finish, I most likely would choose wax. Now, the reason I would choose wax is because I don't need to get in here and get a smooth finish, okay? If this is a beautiful smooth surface and I wanted to keep it shiny and sheen and the whole thing, I would use a clear coat. And Dixie Belle does make some amazing clear coats. They're water-based. They even have one called Gator Hide, which is water repellent, which is amazing. So for today's project, we're going to be using Best Dang Wax and Clear. And I'm going to show you how I apply that. And then after we apply the wax, I'm going to teach you a little bit about Dixie Dirt versus Dixie Belle's wax, because they are two different things for two different projects, but look pretty similar. So it's kind of like, what do you prefer? All right, sniffly nose and all, let's do it. So what is Dixie Belle's wax? this cold, I'm telling you. Dixie Belle's wax is a water-based wax, okay? You can see that the wax is white on the inside, but this is actually Dixie Belle's wax in clear. It just looks white. When you apply it, it does go on clear, and you can see the shape of mine. Does anybody know why mine looks like that versus like a weird scooped out container? I'll tell you why. Because I use the same brush for wax all the time, and it fits perfectly in that little hole that I've created with the wax, right? Okay, so what is this? This is my best dang brush. I wrote on here, wax only. This is my only for wax Dixie Belle's best dang brush. And this is what I like to use to apply my Dixie Belle's wax. So Dixie Belle wax comes in a couple of different colors. We have clear, which I'm going to show you today, black, brown, and white. All right. You also have another product in the Dixie Belle wax line called Easy Peasy Spray Wax, which is another water-based wax. And I'll show you how this works today as well. So how would I wax this surface? Well, I would simply dip my brush into the wax like this, right? See how it sits there up on the surface? And this brush, like I said, is my wax only brush. So I keep it separate from my paints. It doesn't get contaminated. It just stays with its wax. And all you need to do to apply the wax is either brush it on in a circular motion or straight across, up to you. Since this wax is water-based, it does go on very smoothly and very evenly. Once you get it on your piece, you can buff it back with a cloth. You can rub it with an applicator pad. It's entirely up to you. I usually just rub it with the same brush, making sure that I've gotten all of the wax into the crevices, okay? I'm going to use this wax to protect my painted surface and seal it in. Now, since this wax is water-based, you can kind of feel it. It's a little bit sticky, but it's not oily, all right? I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom of my project here, and I'm going to aim you down so you can watch me do that as well. Maybe not, maybe yes. There we go. So I'm just going to wax this little table and get the wax pushed in. You'll see me push pretty hard with this brush, and I'm really just pushing the wax in. And I often get the question too, like, do you need to seal your chalk mineral paint? Do you have to? There's no rules saying that you have to seal your chalk mineral paint. You can leave it the way that it is, but usually on tiny tables, on the surfaces where people might touch or put their hands or put drinks like on the top, I would apply a wax or some sort of finish to protect my work. I see some people watching. Hey, Jeff and Marilyn. So I'm rubbing this wax in, protecting my surface, and providing me with a clear protective coat to my project. Now this does take a little bit of muscle work right here, right? This is why I don't go to the gym. I use my best dang brush instead of going to the gym. And I don't even really have to cover the entire surface on the legs because I really don't feel like people are going to be coming in and touching this. This isn't an area where I feel like you need a ton of protection. So the majority of my wax will be placed on this small shelf at the bottom here where people might put something, and then of course on the top. So I'm just going to rub this wax, water-based wax, across the surface and get it brushed onto the table. All right. Let's put this down a little bit so I can wax the top without stretching my arm all the way up. So I like to use like little circular motions like that and really rub it, really kind of push it into this little table. This little tiny table painted in hurricane gray. Excuse me. Anybody else out there have this lovely little bug that's going around? I feel like everybody who's a mother might have it right now. No joke. But I'm almost better. I'm almost like 100%. I've just kind of like a little bit of yuck left over. I'm using my positive thinking along with my naturopathic remedies to know that I will be done the yuck part tomorrow. It will be gone. All right, let's aim you back up and talk about different types of wax to accent your projects. I'm just gonna give it a brush. I have a cloth on the floor. Dixie Belle actually sells a bag of rags that you can purchase online. They are clean and laundered, and they will be a perfect thing to use when you're applying your waxes because I usually use this to wipe back everything. So let's aim you up. Oh no, Patty's been sick too. Patty, it's been interesting around here. I can't blame my kid because it might have been her, but it also might have been taking her to the doctor's office. Because those places, I'm like, keep it away, keep all the germs away. You see those kids touching everything. I'm like, don't touch anything and put your clothes in the laundry when you get home because you never know at the doctor's office what you might get. All right, so next up, after this clear wax has been applied, I would like to add a little bit of depth and dimension to this piece. And I'm gonna bring you in closer so you can see exactly what I'm doing. And aim you down. And we're going to darken and deepen some of these areas. And I'm gonna show you how to do that. So you could use wax in brown or in black, okay? I preferably would stick with my black because I feel like the brown doesn't really go the best with the gray. So I'm gonna move into the black wax. This wax is water-based. So when I use my black wax, I tend to like give it a little spritz of water just to kind of soften it up, if that makes sense. And when I soften it up, I can kind of get in there and push my brush around. Usually when I'm applying my wax, you will see me use a natural fiber brush like this. And the natural fiber brush just helps me kind of keep a nice pokey surface and poke it into the edges. So I'm gonna show you how I'm gonna use my best dang wax in black, and then I'm gonna show you the opposite side, how I would use my best, my Dixie Dirt and charcoal. It's still the best, but it's a different product as well. I feel like a lot of people don't know about Dixie Dirt, and it's been a while since I've done a tutorial on this product. I'm hoping it's dark enough to kind of get in the edges and show you, but we will see. All right, so I have dipped my brush, my French tip, into my black wax. This has been waxed already with a clear wax, okay? And this is a textured surface. Remember, I blotted my paint on, I pushed my paint on rather than smoothing my paint on. So this textured surface is going to grab the wax in different ways. So on this side of my little, what do you call these things? Half rounds. I'm just gonna push the wax in. I like to get it under the corners here. And I'm going to kind of work around the edges because I do want to keep the interior part of like this section fairly light. What I want to focus on is this area right here. So this wax is applied fairly heavy. You can see how it's heavy here, right? I mean, you could come in and you could wipe off your brush and you could gently rub it and you could do all this shading and texturing and craziness. This is what I normally do. I take my rag because this wax is water-based. Remember, you can't do this with an oil-based wax. I'm going to spray my rag or your paper towel if you choose with water. And then I'm just going to gently take it and I'm going to burnish a little bit. And by burnishing the area that I applied the wax to, what's going to happen is it's going to pull it back some. And by pulling it back a little bit, you're working a little bit less hard to remove the excess that you put on. So just by spraying the water and rubbing, you've gotten a nice even shadow. It's not so harsh. You didn't have to work that hard to get that shadowy look start to happen. Can you see how that happens in those nice textured grooves? And you're in control with a water-based wax on how much you wipe back versus how much you leave on. Some other waxes that you might use would be harder to burnish back in that way. So now you can see how a Dixie Belle's black wax sits in the corners like this. I'm going to show you on the other side of this how to use your best, I keep saying best, it's not your best, I mean it still is the best, but your Dixie Dirt, all right? So in order to apply Dixie Dirt, you're going to need something that makes this stick, because if you haven't seen Dixie Dirt before, this is a powder. Dixie Dirt is a powder, okay? And by powder, I mean like literally like makeup, like a powder, like a little smoky powder. I believe there's 3 colors of Dixie Dirt. Charcoal is like the darkest gray color. Then you have a another color which is more like an earth, more brown color. And then I think there's a very light smoky gray, all right? I don't use the lighter colors often because I usually use this to accent. This is gonna give you a much more feathery look than this. It's a bit of a softer way to age your pieces. Now, by touching that and knowing that it's powder, how do you get it to stick on here? Well, you saw me apply my wax in clear, but it's not really stick. It's not really tacky, right? So when I apply my Dixie Dirt, I use my best dang wax. That's a clear spray wax, okay? Easy peasy spray wax. I'm gonna take this. Let's just call everything best dang today because I'm tired. So I think I'm just gonna keep saying it and I'm not even gonna correct myself anymore. So it's my best dang easy peasy spray wax. And we're gonna stick it on our piece. You always have to shake this because it is liquid in here and the materials inside the bottle will separate, okay? I'm gonna take my easy peasy spray wax and I'm gonna gently spray it on. It's very watery, right? And if I left it like this, it would dry and it would protect your surface. But this is not like a strong wax. This is what I would consider more of an accent wax. Now, I'm gonna take a different brush. I have just a regular chip brush here on the floor, and I'm going to dip it into the powder. So the Dixie Dirt comes out in a powder. It's kind of messy, all right? Don't be afraid. It is kind of messy. It's powdery. It's more like an eyeshadow, I like to equivalent it to. I'm gonna move my clear wax out of the way because if I start dropping this powder, guaranteed I'm gonna drop it in there. So I'm just gonna put that over in the corner. All right, so this is dampened. I mean, this is fairly saturated. You don't have to have it that wet. If you wanted to, you could just kind of gently blot it back. And I'm gonna find the area that I want to put this powder onto. Fingers crossed you can see it because I know that this is really not that far off from what's actually on the piece, okay? Gray on gray, kind of like a charcoal smoky gray on a gray table. So now you can see that powder. Can you see how much more of a softer kind of a line that gives you? Can you see how that sits like that? Right now, this is wet, right? I sprayed that Easy Peasy spray wax. I tapped on my powder. If I touch it and rub it, it's gonna come off a little bit. It's not really sealed in there. So what I like to do is take my cloth, put a little bit of water on there or your Easy Peasy spray wax and just kind of rub back a little bit. I'm gonna start to remove a little bit of what I put on there just so that the darkness stays in the circle, right? In this little corner that I'm working on. And if you wanna add more, you can. Like you can dip back in your powder and dip it back on. It's really more of a artisan way to apply an aged look. Like I feel like it just looks a little bit more natural. And when your Easy Peasy spray wax dries, you can come back in and gently spray it again to seal it, or you can come back in with your small brush that you're using to apply your clear wax and seal it in there as well. So let me hold this up to you and I'm gonna ask you your opinion. Because really there's not much of a difference other than what you're used to and what you like. This here is your Dixie Dirt. This is Dixie Dirt in charcoal. We put it here on the edges and we put it here on the edges of these little half circle wood, what do you call these, rounds. And on this side, I did the Dixie Belle's wax in black, okay? So both serve a purpose. What do you like better? If you're looking at this thinking, I would choose one of these to age my piece, which look do you prefer? Do you prefer kind of the powdery look of the dirt, or do you prefer like the wiped in look of the wax? Now remember, this paint has texture. I applied it in a way that I would get a texture. So you're still gonna see texture on your piece. Which one do you prefer? Wax or the powder? I see somebody commenting wax. Let's see. Oh, I see Theo watching on there. Hey, Mr. Would You Bend, how you doing? Haven't seen you in a while. So you can powder on that darkness. It's up to you. I like both. I really don't have a preference per se. I do like both. I think there's a place for both pieces. In the dirt department, if I have a piece that is painted in a very light color, I tend to like the dirt a little bit more because of the natural kind of fanning out that it does. If I have a piece that's dark where I really want to rub it in the texture, I kind of like the black wax more. So, I mean, different things for different purposes. It's really what you like and how you like to do it. So I hadn't used the Dixie Dirt in a very long time. I feel like it's been a while since I've used it. And I really couldn't remember why I haven't had it out in so long. It's just that there's so many things to play with. You kind of get in a habit, right? Like I get in the habit of using my black wax because it's easy. So for this project, I think it would be faster to use the wax, because if you came in and had to powder, like spray and powder and wipe back, it might take you a little bit longer to do the Dixie Dirt. But don't forget about these products from Dixie Belle. Dixie Dirt is a kind of like an underutilized tool. I feel like a lot of people don't use it, and it's a lot of fun. It creates a really pretty smoky age to a piece. And the tones are really nice. So when I use a darker tone that has like a cool tone, I tend to go dark in the charcoal. If I have something that's warmer, I tend to use earth, which is the brown. But don't forget, I feel like it's an underutilized tool that definitely needs to be in your toolbox, because I think you'll like it once you start to get in there and play with it. It's one of those things that I do enjoy. So let's go back to wax. I'm gonna go back into my black wax and I'm gonna go over top of my dirt just because I want to make this table look the same. I was only showing you two different options because I can, because I want to be fancy like that. So let's add this black wax over top of our piece and take my rag and my water and wipe back so you can really see how we can make these details just pop. This is like my favorite thing about water-based waxes, is getting in here and brushing off and leaving it in the crevices. It just makes my job so much easier. You're working less hard, if that makes sense, to complete an area. So let's keep going. Again, I like to spray inside my water-based wax with a little bit of water just to kind of mush it up in there. And then it really helps you push it into those details. So let's age this table together. And then once it's aged, I'm gonna actually come in here with a little bit of gilding wax, because that's another option for you as well, to use gilding wax to really add those layers, right? So I'm just smoothing out my edges so that it doesn't look too defined, right? Smoothing out those aging edges and applying it all the way around my tiny table. I also really like the texture on this table. I'm turning into a really big fan of stippling on my paint. I feel like it hides so many flaws on a piece, and it gives you a lot of visual interest. I don't know, I dig it. It's been my new thing that I've been doing lately, stippling rather than painting. And anybody can stipple, anybody can paint mash. It's not hard. So we have this drawer here. You have a couple options when you have a drawer. You could go in heavy, like around the corners and the edges, which is usually what I do. I actually usually like to add a little bit of extra darkness around where the hardware will sit, because that's really kind of where the natural age of a piece would happen, right? When you touch things all the time, that's where the dirt goes. And really, that's all we're doing is dirting it up. We're dirting it up. It's like my favorite thing to say. Let's dirt it up. Let's make it look dirty. It's my favorite way to make a piece look unique. Let's dirt it up and make it dirty. So I'm just gonna keep applying my wax all the way around all of these details. And you can easily just take your dampened rag and push it back, and getting it in the space. Does that look a little bit more interesting than just plain gray? I feel like it definitely adds a little bit more value to your work. Gives you the extra little edge of making something just look a little bit older. And that's the area that we started on, this tiny little table, right? We started on that one little section. So I'm just gonna spray, kind of blur out that edge a little bit. Perfection. So I'm gonna do this now on the bottom, and I'm gonna aim the camera down so you can see, and I'm gonna use the wax on the bottom of the table. So same section, same wax, same color, black, right? Just pushing it in around all the corners where it naturally would get dirty. Think about the areas that dirt and dust would collect. Think about the areas where people might touch something a little bit more. And that's usually the areas that you're going to want to highlight. I just like to rub the edges a little bit. And I'm gonna do heavy on the feet too, I think. Remember the feet last week? We repaired these feet with my Dixie Belle's mud in order to fix them up, because there was a couple big chips in there. So after that mud dried, I came in and painted them in the gray. I'm just gonna make sure I can get all these feet covered. A little bit more wax. And then this one too. Okay, so let's kind of blend out this interior circle. Got my bag of rags. I'm just gonna make sure that my wax isn't too defined. I kind of want to wipe it back a little bit. You could also take your wax, you can see that there's like an inset part of a panel. If you push your wax into that darkness right there, into those little inset lines, what you can do is pull it back on the flat surface, and it should sit on the interior section as well. So it's just giving a little bit more definition to your tiny table, to my tiny table. It's just a little gray table. think this guy was a little freebie find on Marketplace. Okay, one more section, get in there and pull some of that wax back so we don't have too much of a defined line. Now remember with waxes, if you're planning on adding a transfer, you need to do your transfer before you add your wax, because your wax will be a barrier for your transfer to not stick. Transfers and waxes don't like each other. They tend to repel each other. So you need to be aware of that. Any transfers that are going in your piece will go on before your wax. All right, so let's move into the next little tiny detail. Now that I've got my wax on there, it's going to stay on there. You might find that it stays a little bit tacky because it needs to kind of like shore up and get solid. You can wait for it to get dry and then add a clear coat over top if you're worried about your waxes moving. But I usually find that, you know, within a couple of days, they get hard and they're not going to move anymore. And you are good to go. So what else can you do on your tiny little piece? I gotta lose the sweater. This little cold right now is making me sweaty. All right, back in the t-shirt. What else can you do with waxes? Well, you can do something called gilding wax. Have you heard of gilding wax? If you know me, you know I love some gilding wax. I am a gilding wax girl. This is gilding wax in gold, and it is one of my favorite things to do. So you're gonna open it up and you're gonna see the color inside. There's a bunch, silver and gold and bronze and black, and I use them all and I love them. This is an oil-based product, okay? This tiny little pot will last you a really long time. I'm going to show you how I apply my gilding wax. So let's bring you back in so you can see nice and close. Since this is an oil-based product, I keep a separate brush for this. So over here, I was using my black one the other day. This is my black gilding wax brush. You can tell right there. I will keep it like this. Because it's oil-based, this is not going to wash out. All right. So once I claim a brush for gilding wax, it's going to be my gilding wax brush forever until it falls apart. So how do you apply gilding wax? Well, knowing that it's an oil-based product, you know that you can apply it last and it's going to harden and cure on its own. I use this wax a lot for hardware, but it is wonderful for fun little accents like this. I'm going to gently dip in here, and sometimes I like to brush it off onto a rag or onto a piece of paper because it can get a little chunky in here. Like, this is actually really thick product. So by gently just touching, I'm only putting a little bit on my brush. Now you can gently wipe it on, and all of a sudden your details just pop. Look at that. Look how pretty that is. So I like to hit kind of like all of my edges with the wax. I'm pretty much a gilding wax girl that anything that is bent, any kind of curved surface, is going to get a gilding wax touch. Check that out. Look how pretty that is. How fast was that? So cute, right? All of a sudden, all of those details just pop. They just pop. So I'm going to do the same thing in the drawer. I'm going to push the drawer out, and I'm going to gently dust on the edges. By dusting on the edges, and you don't have to. I mean, you could pick gold, you could pick silver. I really like gold. I don't know, it's my jam. And all of a sudden, your drawer pops. Look at how cute that is, right? It's so cute. It just gives that extra little bounce to your piece. Now, the hardware for this piece, let's see if I have there's the screw. Hardware for this piece is black, okay? So watch this. I'm gonna put this on. I mean, I can get gold. I don't know if I definitely have gold in my stash. I feel like this piece needs a bit of a fancy pants hardware, but I'm going to show you something real quick. Even better, let's take it out and I'm going to show you something real quick before I put it on, and then I'm going to show you what to do. So most likely I'm going to put a gold hardware on here because that is my go-to. When I have gold accents, I switch it out to gold. But say this was your hardware and this is the only one you have, and you're like, ew, I don't like that color. This is not for me. I want to change it. Remember I said that this gilding wax is oil-based? You can easily, presto changeo, bingo bango, change your hardware from whatever color it is to gold with your gilding wax. What? Look at that. Oh my gosh, how fast was that? I didn't have to spray paint anything. I didn't have to take it outside and lay it out with my spray paint because the spray paint is smelly and toxic. I just hit it with the gilding wax and I've got a new knob. So once this dries and cures, it's solid. Like, you could touch this all day long and it's not going to come off. So let's just put it on here for decoration's sake, even though I probably will be changing the hardware to something else. I went from like that boring black to beautiful gold. Everything I see somebody saying everything, oh, it's Patty, everything gets gilding wax. Of course it does, Patty. Of course it does. If you're in the cool club, you know that gilding wax goes on everything. And also, gilding wax just looks really, really good in pictures. It takes your piece to like another level of glow factor. I don't know. You guys know I like to put all of the things in all of the pieces. Like, we don't really paint boring over here. We don't usually do one color finishes, but I also like to teach you guys stuff. And for me to come on here and just kind of play with all of these things, this is like the best job in the world. Check out that gold. Look at that. So cute, right? So I added those little wood rounds. I just picked up a whole bag of them off of Amazon for like not much at all. So cute, right? I actually might leave that knob now that it's gold. Now that it's gold, I don't hate it anymore. But I mean, isn't that the truth anyways with everything, ladies? If it's gold, we're probably gonna like it. Just give us all the gold jewelry. We'll be just fine. We'll be just fine. So let's keep adding this little wax. So I'm just gonna come around the edges and gently touch anywhere where I've got these little accent pieces to sparkle it up some. Let's add that frosting to our tiny little freebie table. She's looking pretty good now though, isn't she? She's not so boring anymore. Now she's got her jewelry on. She's got some fancy little details. She's got some age in the corners. Perfection, perfection. Yeah, Patty says golden diamonds. Girl, I'm there too. Me too. Moi aussi. All right, so let's do the bottom edge because I'm gonna have to put some gold down there too to match it up, right? So for here, I would probably just touch the gold gently, just around the edge, just to kind of give it a tiny bit of sparkle, just a little bit. And then we have to wax the top and then this table is done. All I have to do is stage it and take some cutie little pictures and take it to the shop because maybe somebody needs a new table for Christmas, right? You never know. You never know. So just rubbing on that gold. You can make sure you touch the feet a little bit too. It's always nice little shadow. Remember I told you that gold is great for pictures. Just add shine where there really wasn't any before. And new hardware in 2.5 seconds. Can't forget that, right? All right, perfect. So what's left? The top. We didn't do the top yet. Let's finish this tiny table and get it done. Do I have a chair over here? Maybe I'll just tip it so that we can do it together. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to my black wax because I haven't finished the top. Let's tilt it this way so my drawer doesn't fly out and get me. Let's try and do this so that everybody can see to their best advantage the top of the table. I see Diane watching. How are you? Okay, so I'm gonna spray my wax. Remember, this is water-based wax. I'm gonna spray it with a little bit of water just to soften it up some. I see my brush has got some stray hairs on there. I tend to be really hard on my brushes, and these brushes are natural bristles, so they shed a little bit. So I'm gonna add wax to the outside edges and then the circle part of this table. And once I get it on there, I'm gonna grab my rag and I'm gonna wipe it back. So I'm pushing that black wax into my little textured table, getting it in all the little nooks and crannies. And I'm gonna do the little inner circle too, I think. Let's just push it in there too. I don't have to, but I'm going to. Remember, we really did a lot of texture on this table. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna spray my table with water this time, just because I'm holding it with one hand. And then I'm gonna take my rag and soften my edges with that sprayed on water. Might be a little bit easier to do this way, so I'm holding it. Can you see how that wax really sits in this table? So this table had water damage over here, which was raised up a little bit since it is just made of a particle board like material. So using that kind of textured finish on my piece where I really pushed that paint on really helps disguise any of those water damages, right? Work smarter, not harder. So there we go, we've got my table. Let's put it back up here. Make sure I can push hard enough to wipe around the edge. And we're gonna add a little bit of wax to that as well. I'm gonna go back into my gold gilding wax and I'm just gonna gently dust my edges. And then I'll leave it sit because, you know, I did slam a lot of wax on there fairly quick. I want to make sure that it gets nice and dry before I go touching it or before I go taking it to the shop. You want to make sure that your waxes have kind of cured up. That's so funny. I really just did that kind of because it was the wrong color, and now I like it. Now I like that knob on this piece. So cute. So it's just brushing the edges. You can really see it grabbing the texture. Anything that's raised is going to catch that wax a little bit more.
And you are now finished your sweet little table. I hope that you learned something today on this beginner's tutorial all about chalk mineral paint, Dixie Belle's dirt, and Dixie Belle's waxes today. You can catch me painting live every Wednesday at 3 p.m. EST on the Dixie Belle Paint page on Facebook. And don't be afraid to ask any questions. Feel free to send me a message at any time. Thank you for watching. I'll see you again next time.